So I did a durability test on the 2017 LG Gram, and it went pretty well, but there were a few suggestions. A few people wanted to know what the camera lens was made out of. It looks like it's made out of plastic, but since this isn't like a portable in-your-pocket device, I don't think that's too big of an issue. Another person wanted to know if the charging port still worked, which it does. You can see it charging here in the corner. Surprising to me, though, was that some of you said the drop test wasn't violent enough. So let's try it one more time on some concrete stairs. Looks like we got a little damage on the edges here, on the corner. Let's see if it still works. And it is still functioning. Looks like we're still in one piece. We got a small bend right there on the corner. But everything else still works. That's pretty impressive. Drop it down about 8 stairs there. So now that we know the laptop can survive a 200-pound guy standing on it, being dropped normally on a carpeted floor, and being dropped down a flight of concrete steps, let's take it apart and see what's inside. I'm curious to see how big the battery actually is inside of this thing. This laptop was given to me by LG to durability test and tear down, which is rather brave of them. Opening up the laptop is actually pretty easy. It needs to be turned off first, and then all of the Phillips head screws are hidden under these little circular tabs and rubber boots. There are 8 screws total. Even without the screws in place, the back is still very solidly snapped into the frame, so it takes some pretty heavy prying to remove it. And look at the size of that battery. I'll talk more about this in a second, but it's a 60 watt-hour battery with an advertised lifespan of 17 hours. Pretty darn impressive for a laptop. It's got a copper heat pipe system over the processor, similar to what we saw inside the LG G6, except for this one also has a fan attached to it. Speaking of cool, the ports are detached from the motherboard and on a separate PCB. I imagine this is to help keep the laptop super thin, but it's also good for repairability. If one of your ports break, you don't need a new motherboard. You can just swap out the less expensive, smaller boards. We have 2 USB ports, a headphone jack, and a micro SD card slot on this side. And on the far side, we have a charging port, another USB port, an HDMI, and a USB-C port. This laptop needs 0 dongles in order to be useful. It's ready to rock right out of the box. Speaking of useful, LG has upgradability, longevity, and repairability in mind when designing this laptop. The RAM is modular. If you were to buy an Apple laptop, this would be soldered onto the large motherboard, which is not replaceable and not upgradable. But with this LG Gram, in a few years when the specs are outdated, you can just plop in a higher capacity RAM stick and continue being productive. Same thing with the hard drive. This laptop comes with 512 gigabytes, but a few years down the road, as games and video files keep increasing in size, you might want to upgrade. This M.2 slot allows for upgrading hard drives. If you were to buy a new MacBook from Apple, a few years from now you'll be left high and dry with no upgradable hardware. So I'm super glad that LG is still looking out for consumers. Thumbs up for that. Onto the battery. There are 6 screws around the edge of this gigantic thing. I can unclip it from the motherboard and the 60 watt-hour battery comes loose. It looks like it has 4 separate quadrants inside of it, which is interesting. Looks like the touchpad is replaceable. And another cool thing I noticed when I tossed it down those concrete stairs is that there are super strong magnets in the base and the lid holding it together. Since this laptop is so lightweight, the magnets make sure that the lid doesn't fall open on accident. And lastly, if your screen does break somehow, the hinge connectors are here, along with the attachment to the motherboard. The What's Inside YouTube channel dropped one of these laptops from 25 feet onto concrete, and it still lived. So a broken screen is going to be pretty rare. I'll clip that battery back in with its 6 screws, and then that back panel made from the special nanocarbon magnesium alloy snaps into place, with 8 screws for extra security. Overall, this laptop is a solid and durable build, with ports and replaceable components, so it gets a thumbs up from me. As with all electronics, the price is always changing, so I'll add a link in the video description for the most current, up-to-date pricing on this laptop. Huge thanks to LG for sending me this one to review, and let me know in the comments which laptop you want to see me review next. Thanks a ton for watching. I'll see you around.